Have you ever been told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, too much? Maybe you learned to monitor how much you talk in conversations, always holding back just a little. Maybe you apologize for having needs, or you've gotten really good at making yourself small so others feel comfortable around you. If you've spent your life walking on eggshells in relationships, especially in spiritual communities, afraid that if you show up fully, people will pull away, this episode is for you. Because here's what I need you to hear today. You were never too much. You were just in spaces too small. The fire in you, the passion, the deep emotions, the big dreams, none of that was ever the problem. In fact, what you were told was too much might actually be God's Spirit expressing through your unique design. Today, we're talking about the I'm too much barrier, how it gets installed, what it's costing you in your relationships, and how to step into spaces big enough to honor the fullness of who you were created to be. So settle in. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome to Healing Religious Trauma, the podcast for Christian women ready to heal without losing their faith. If you're feeling the weight of spiritual pressure and distant from the God you used to trust, you're in the right place. I'm Deborah Schaefer, spiritual healing coach, founder of the Coming Home Journey, and someone who's walked the hard road of untangling toxic faith. If you're ready to make sense of your story, find peace with a safe, loving God, and hear stories that remind you you're not alone, grab your tea, toss the rule book, and let's go. Before we begin, I want to invite you into something transformational. If you're ready to break through all 12 hidden barriers of religious trauma and step into authentic, healthy relationships where you don't have to shrink to belong, the Coming Home Journey was created for you. It's a 6-month guided experience with live coaching, a supportive community, and everything you need to heal with your faith intact. Learn more at thecominghomejourney.com. And if you want to start with something free, take the quiz at religionstraumaquiz.com. You'll discover which hidden barriers you're carrying and receive my complete Essential Starters Kit, my book, He Is Enough, the Truth Over Tradition mini course, live reading circles, and community access, all free. Your healing starts with one brave step. Let's take it together. You know, I've shared in other episodes about my own experience with being told I was too much, how I grew up being shushed, learning that refined Christian women don't get too excited or shouldn't be out front or seen, how I felt parts of myself getting smaller and smaller until I didn't even know where I disappeared to. You know, it was because I was born with a size 8 foot, but I was given a size 7 shoe. And sometimes it was a 6 or even a 5. But it wasn't until years later at a healing weekend that I learned something that changed everything. The word enthusiasm comes from the Greek entheos, which literally means to be inspired or possessed by God, having God within. The very thing I was told made me too much was actually God's Spirit expressing through me. I didn't need a smaller shoe. I needed bigger boots for a bigger journey. And I've watched the same breakthrough happen with so many women in our community. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Let me start by saying something really important. If you've been told you're too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too needy, too intense, too loud, I need you to know that this wasn't about you. This was about the container you were placed in. And today, we're going to gently unpack this I'm too much barrier together. We're going to look at how it all got installed, what it's really costing you, and how to find spaces and create relationships that are big enough to hold the fullness of who you are. All right, the first point that I want to talk about today is how this I'm too much gets installed. So let's talk about that, where this barrier even comes from. The I'm too much belief runs especially deep in women who were shaped by spiritual systems that never made room for a woman's God given strength, voice, or authentic expression. You may have been told your emotions were excessive, your needs were selfish, your boundaries were wrong, your dreams were too big, your questions were rebellious, your passion was prideful. And if you grew up in certain religious environments, there were often very specific messages about what a good Christian woman should look like, such as refined Christian women don't get too excited. Godly women are quiet and reserved. The more you stay in the background, the more pleasing to God you are. Strong emotions are signs of weak faith. Your ambition is pride. Over time, these messages didn't just shape how you behaved in public, they shaped how you related to everyone, including God. You started monitoring yourself constantly. How much am I talking? Am I being too emotional? Are my needs too big? Will people pull away if I ask for help? And here's the really painful part. You began to believe that the fullness of who you are, your fire, your passion, your deep capacity to feel and love, was something that needed to be managed, controlled, or hidden. You learned to shrink yourself to stay connected, to dim your light, to make others comfortable, to apologize for taking up space. But friend, listen to me. You were born with a size 8 foot, but you were given a size 7 shoe. And sometimes it was a 6 or a 5. The problem was never your foot. The problem was the shoe. You didn't need to become smaller. You needed bigger spaces that could honor your divine design. And here's the beautiful truth that changed everything for me. The word enthusiasm, that very quality so many of us were told to suppress, literally means having God within. What you were told was, quote, too much, was actually God's Spirit expressing through your unique gifts. You weren't too much. You were divinely designed. All right, here's the second point for today. What I'm too much is really costing you. Okay? So let's talk about what this barrier is actually doing in your life right now. Because the I'm too much belief doesn't just affect how you show up in one area, it affects everything. Your relationships, your spiritual life, your sense of self, your ability to receive love. Here's how it shows up. In your relationships, you're constantly walking on eggshells. You monitor how much you share, how much you need, how much space you take up. You settle for connections that feel too small because at least they feel safe. And you're terrified that if you show up fully with all your emotions, all your needs, all your brilliance, people will leave. In your spiritual life, you've learned to suppress your questions, your doubts, your big dreams. You think that passion and enthusiasm are somehow less spiritual than quiet reserve. You apologize to God for wanting more, feeling deeply, or needing His presence in big ways. In your work and calling, you hold yourself back. You don't speak up in meetings. You don't share your big ideas. You undercharge for your gifts because you're afraid people will think you're prideful or too ambitious. In your body, you literally make yourself smaller. You take up less space. You quiet your voice. You dim your energy. And over time, this physical shrinking becomes so automatic that you forget what it feels like to stand tall and take up your full space. And beneath all these patterns is one core fear. If I show up fully, I will lose connection. Love requires me to be less. But friend, that's not love. That's control. That's fear. That's codependency. Real love, divine love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It invites you to expand. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 54:2, enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch your tent curtains wide. Do not hold back. Did you catch that? Do not hold back. God isn't asking you to make yourself smaller. He's inviting you to stretch wide. And here's what I've discovered in my own journey and in walking with many women through this. The relationships that require you to shrink, those aren't your people. Those aren't your spaces. You don't need to change your foot size. You need to find bigger boots. All right, and here's the third point I want to talk about today. How to step into spaces big enough for your fullness. Okay, so how do we actually make this shift? How do we move from shrinking to shining? Not in an arrogant way, but in an authentic way. It starts with understanding what healthy relationships actually look like. And this is where milestone 10 in the Coming Home journey becomes so transformative. First, you'll learn the difference between divine boundaries and walls. Many of us who've been told we're too much have done one of two things. We've either had no boundaries at all, desperately trying to please everyone, or we've built walls so high that no one can get close. But divine boundaries are different. They're based on God's immutable principles: love, gentleness, free will, respect for others' autonomy. Divine boundaries protect your authentic self without shutting others out or trying to control what they do. They let you say, I can be fully me, and you can be fully you, and we can still be in relationship. Second, you discover what love really is and what it isn't. In religious trauma recovery, we have to relearn what love means, because often what we were taught was love was actually control, or manipulation, or conditional acceptance. True love, divine love, is a decision of a sanctified will. It's not a feeling that comes and goes based on someone's behavior. Pure love is simple in its operations. It flows like an irrepressible stream. It creates genuine intimacy through authenticity, not performance. And here's the key. Love doesn't require you to shrink. It celebrates your expansion. When you're in relationship founded on divine love, you don't have to monitor yourself constantly. You don't have to apologize for your needs. You don't have to dim your light. You can show up fully with all your passion, all your emotions, all your fire, and you are received. Not tolerated, received. Third, you learn to honor your own divine design. You were created with a specific capacity, a specific energy, a specific way of expressing God's love in the world. And that expression might be bigger, bolder, or brighter than what the people around you are comfortable with. But that doesn't mean you need to change. It means you need to find your people, the ones who aren't threatened by your light, but who celebrate it. It means you need to step into spaces that honor your size 8 foot instead of trying to cram it into a size 7 shoe. And here's what I've seen happen over and over again. When you stop shrinking and start showing up fully, the right people don't pull away. They lean in. They say, finally, I've been waiting for the real you. And the people who do pull away, they were never your people to begin with. They were just familiar. And there's a difference. Psalm 18:19 says, "He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me." A spacious place. Not a cramped box. Not a confining shoe. God delights in you, in your fullness, in your fire, in all the ways you're uniquely you. And He's inviting you into relationships and spaces that are big enough to hold all of that. Okay, let's wrap this up. So here's what I want you to take with you this week. For your reflection, ask yourself, where in my life am I still shrinking to stay connected? What relationships or environments are asking me to be less than I am? And what would it feel like to step into a space where I didn't have to hold back? And for your action, choose one brave act of expansion this week. Maybe that's speaking up in a conversation instead of holding back. Maybe it's sharing a big dream with someone safe. Maybe it's setting a boundary without apologizing for it. Or maybe it's simply standing tall, taking up your full space, and reminding yourself, I'm not too much. I'm exactly enough. You don't need a smaller shoe, friend. You need bigger boots for a bigger journey. You don't need to dim your light. You need spaces that can handle your brightness. And you don't need to apologize for the fire in you. That fire, that's God within. That's divine inspiration. That's your sacred design. This week, I invite you to stop contorting and start expanding. Because you were never too much. You were just in spaces too small. Hey friend, if today's episode resonated with you, if you felt that ache of recognition, that longing for relationships where you don't have to shrink, I want to invite you to take the next step. In the Coming Home journey, we do deep work on healing your relationship patterns and creating authentic connections founded on divine love, not fear. You'll learn to set healthy boundaries, honor your needs without guilt, and find your people, the ones who celebrate your fullness instead of asking you to shrink. Learn more at thecominghomejourney.com. And if you're not quite ready for that, start with the free quiz at religiostraumaquiz.com. Discover which hidden barriers you're carrying and get my complete Essential Starters kit, all free. Your fullness is not a problem to solve. It's a gift to honor. Next week, we're diving into something that might feel tender, but is also incredibly powerful: the I'm unworthy barrier. Even as you begin to heal, even as you start to reclaim your voice and your space, there's often this quiet voice that whispers, who am I to shine? Who am I to heal? Who am I to lead? If you've ever felt like maybe you're being prideful for wanting more, or selfish for taking up space, or presumptuous for believing God could actually use you, next week's episode is going to be like balm for your soul. We're going to talk about seeing yourself through the eyes of compassion, recognizing your healing as holy, and understanding that your transformation wasn't just for you. It was also for women who are coming behind you. I can't wait to walk through this with you. Until then, remember, you're not too much, you're not broken, and you're definitely not alone. I'll see you next week, friend.